Richmond, Northeastern. How you guys doing? We good? Okay, you guys can do better. How are we doing this morning? We doing all right? So what I'm gonna talk about today is real life, and it's my story, and it's the struggles that I went through. How many of you in here, not yourself, not you personally, how many of you in here, by a show of hands, know somebody that is currently or has used drugs? How many of you in here, not yourself, but know someone that has overdosed and is no longer with us? You see, that when we see that many hands, it's the reason that we do what we do. Because I've overdosed multiple times, but I was blessed enough to be able to stand here today and talk to you about it. I grew up in a small town, northeastern Indiana, about an hour and a half away from here, right beside Marion, Indiana, in a little town of Gas City. I went to Richmond High School. So I'm local, and my story happened in your guys' backyard. You see, I grew up in a single-parent household. My mom and my grandma did everything they could to help raise me, but I didn't have a father. I didn't know what a male role model looked like. So by the time that I get to high school and I'm looking for something to fill a void inside of me that I couldn't explain. By my sophomore year, I started to excel a little bit athletically on the football field and in wrestling. The entire time, there was something inside of me that was missing, and I was searching to fill that void. My junior year comes. I'm all-state in football. I went to semi-state in wrestling. I was using drugs every single day, and it started out harmless. It started out innocent. But as a 15, 16-year-old kid, I didn't understand what addiction meant, and I didn't understand that every choice and decision that I made had consequences. And at 15 and 16 years old, really nobody could tell me anything. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to listen. I was going to do my own thing. My senior year rolls around. I go to state in wrestling. I was all-state for the second year in a row in football. College scholarships are coming in. Be transparent, no big schools, but I had a lot of options in Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio. But at this point, I had a monkey on my back that was stronger than any dream or aspiration that I had as a child growing up. Towards the end of my senior season, I had a surgery. I broke my foot. They took bone out of my hip. And I was prescribed a pain medication called Vicodin. Having an opiate that was strong at my beck and call was a life changer for me. You see, back then I didn't understand what it meant to have an addictive personality. Anybody know what an addictive personality is? A couple of you? You do too? Awesome. So I come to find out that it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I do it to the fullest extent. So it doesn't matter if I have 10 pills, I'm not going to do 1 or 2, I'm going to do all 10. It doesn't matter if I have 1 blunt or 10 blunts, I'm going to smoke every one of them. Same way with alcohol. I had no chill. I could not cut myself off. And it led to an extremely rocky road. I graduated high school. I went to college for a year. I'm completely strung out on drugs. I moved back home. And anybody that was a positive influence in my life, because as I said, I didn't have a father figure. I didn't have anybody to teach me how to do things the right way. So any of the positive influence that I had in my life, any of those kids had moved on to college and they started doing things and they started trying to fulfill that dream and that purpose and that calling on their life. I came back home. I come back home. I get a call from Richmond High School, from my old wrestling coach. He asked me would I be interested in coaching. I said, sure. I ain't got nothing else going on. I ain't got a job. Nobody knows about my drug usage. So I coach at the middle school and at the high school for 3 years, 2005, 2006, and 2007. And during this time, I'm continuing to use more and more and more. My first overdose was in 2006. Luckily, it wasn't a bad overdose. My buddies stripped me. They threw me in a bathtub. They turned cold water on. They continued to dump cold water on me until I finally came to. Looking back now, I realize that if it wouldn't have been for that group of 3, it was the first time that I should have died, and I probably would have died if they weren't there to put me in that bathtub. 2007, a year after my first overdose, my drug usage has gotten so bad. I wasn't making enough money to support my habits. I wasn't making enough money to feed myself because of my habits. It's a Friday night. We have wrestling sectionals the next day, Saturday morning. That night, I should have been watching film. I should have been with the other coaches. But I had come to a point where nothing else mattered, but how was I going to get high tonight? So I made a decision that evening that put me on a path to change my life forever. I'm sitting in my bedroom. I have a 1-bedroom apartment. And I'm sitting in there, and I recall exactly what happened that night. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, and there's something on the TV. And I remember I had a poster on the wall. And I made a decision that I was going to get high any way possible. So I knew a lot of people in my little town. I knew their schedules and when they were at work, and I knew that one of my best friends growing up, I knew that he was in college. He wasn't going to be home. So I walked out my door, and I walked 4 houses down. I knocked on the door. I knew nobody was home. I walked around back, and I kicked the door in. At that point, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew nothing else mattered. But how was I going to get high? I was experiencing withdrawals. I felt like my life was over. So when I kicked that back door in, I started going through cabinets and dressers and medicine cabinets, looking for anything and everything I could possibly get to get up enough money to go get high. I didn't find much. So I walked out her back door, and I walked a couple houses down from there, and I didn't know these people, and I kicked in that back door, and I found a few pills, and I found a little bit of cash. But my thought process was, I need more. So I run back to my house, and I'm sitting on my bed, and my adrenaline's pumping, and I didn't understand the severity of the crimes I just committed in the state of Indiana, but nothing else mattered. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna hit one more house. So I went a block over, and I found a house that looked like there was no lights on and there was no car in the driveway. And what happens next, I'll never be able to forget it. I'll never be able to unsee what I saw. Instead of knocking on that front door, I walked around back. They had a screened-in porch. I walked in that porch, and I put my size 13 straight through the back door. When I walked into their laundry room area, I'll never forget the sound of the blood-curdling scream that this lady made from the other room. You see, my intentions weren't to hurt anybody. My intentions weren't to scare anybody. But it turns out that there's a mom in her early 20s, and she has a newborn baby in the living room, and the only thing that she can think is, somebody's here to rob me, kill me, hurt my baby. And she screams and screams. And I did the only thing that I could think to do. I turned around and ran straight back to my house, scared to death. But you see, living in a small town, I'm coaching at the high school, and I grew up a block away from the door I just kicked in. She recognized me in the split second that she's seen me in her kitchen. The cops show up to my house a few minutes later. I'm 20 years old, and I had my entire life ahead of me. And I find myself in a cop car, handcuffed, heading to the jail. I sat in the jail for 2 weeks. I get out, went right back to the same stuff I was doing, hanging out with the same people. I caught a B felony burglary. I was out and caught another B felony burglary on bond. Anybody familiar what a B felony was or is? Anybody? In the state of Indiana back then, a B felony carried a maximum of 20 years, due 10, and a minimum of 6 years, due 3. So now I have 2 of these cases pending on separate numbers, and at 20 years old, I had to face the reality that I'm going to prison. So I ended up getting 14 years. They put a lot of that on probation. They sent me down. I did 3.5 years. I get out. Has anybody in here ever heard of the phrase or the saying, people, places, and things? So in the world of drugs and recovery, the first thing they tell you to do if you're a recovering addict or trying to be a recovering addict is change your people, change your places, and change your things. So I took that advice to heart, and I went back home and I hung out with the exact same people in the exact same places, and I was doing the exact same things. Because I was 24 years old, and I'd done stuff my way for so long because, again, I didn't have a father figure. I didn't have no one but a mom that worked 2 jobs to try to raise me. So I raised myself, and I had done things for so long by myself, and it had worked out so good for me, I'm going to continue to do that. I made it 8.5 months. I violated, and they sent me right back to prison. I did all of my remainder time. I did another 3.5 years I'm almost 27 years old. I've been in prison now for 7 years of my 20s. And when I got out again, I went back to the same people, the same places, and the same things. But what I really struggled with was a feeling of hopelessness, a feeling that I didn't belong. I struggled with feeling that I had done so many bad things from the little area I was from that I was never be able to get my name back, and I'd never be able to make it, and I'd never be successful. Anybody in here ever feel like you've done something so bad so many times that you'll never be able to make it, or that people will always judge you for something you've done in your past? Show of hands, anybody? A few of you. So that's where I was at. And I let that feeling consume me. And I turned right back to the streets because that's all I ever knew. I turned back to selling dope. I turned back to using dope. And it was in less than 10 months that I found myself in prison for the third time. But this time, a lot of things changed. They sent me to Westville Correctional Facility, northwestern Indiana, right outside of Gary in Chicago. At Westville, you have two choices. You join a gang, or you fight for your life. I had never been in a gang. I had never been affiliated. I was 6'4". I told myself that I'm going to fight for my life. I got this. I didn't have it. It was the most miserable 5 years of my life. It was almost fights every single day. I got jumped, beat, stabbed, hit with a lock in the top of the head. The entire time I'm using in prison, some of you may not understand or may not know. Anybody in here have a relative or somebody they know that's been in prison? A lot of hands. You see, if you can get something in the streets from alcohol, methamphetamines, pain pills, heroin, it doesn't matter. If you can get it out here, we got it in there. The only difference is it costs us a little more money behind bars than it does for people in the real world. I'm using every single day. Every single day. It was in early October 2017. I was on one. I owed some people some money. I told them to get it off the roof. I'm not paying you nothing. So they come and took what was theirs. I sat in the infirmary for a few weeks. That was when I had gotten stabbed. Luckily, it barely hit me. I get out, and I go back to my cell. They put me in a different block. And I'm sitting in the day room. The day room is a big common area where people can hang out. One TV at 24 hours a day plays sports. The other TV plays nothing but TV programs. Depending on what block you're in, whatever affiliation is running that block, that's who controls the TV. If you don't like what they're watching, you don't watch it. Simple as that. There was a basketball game on, it was October, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching the sports TV, and there's a table beside me, no further than me to you, and they're playing cards. They're playing spades. They're bickering amongst each other. It starts to get loud. One of the number one rules in prison that you learn is you mind your own business. If it doesn't happen to you and it's not happening directly to you or it doesn't affect you, you pay it no mind, you give it no attention. So I hear this yelling and I hear this arguing, and I let it go. I don't pay it no mind. Somebody dropped a B word. The other gentleman felt disrespected. I hear it. I know that's not a good sign, but I try not to think anything of it. The gentleman that was disrespected stood up. He walks directly past me, so close to me that he brushed my shirt. He doesn't say a word. He went into his cell. He was in there for a couple minutes. He came right back out, walked directly past me, didn't say a word. These other three gentlemen have no idea what's going on. They're still talking and arguing. This man pulls out a knife and he stabs this man over and over and over in the back of the neck and in the back of the lungs. And again, I'm sitting no further than 5 to 6 feet away. Everyone, it's chaos, screaming, blood. This man falls out of his chair, and I essentially, at 27, 28 years old, I just watched a man die in front of my face. And my choices and my decisions led me to that moment at that exact time. What I was doing as a teenager that seemed like fun and games, and as I continued to do as an adult, and I'm not hurting anyone, I may be committing crimes, but no one's getting hurt, led me to where I watch a man bleed to death in front of my face. But here's the kicker to that. The cops run in, pepper spray, mace, it's chaos. They lock us all up in our cells. They come in, they got these people in hazmat suits, and they're cleaning the blood, and they bring an emergency crew in, and they put this dead body on a stretcher, and they wheel him out. They finish cleaning, they finish sanitizing, and in less than 3 hours after I watched a man bleed to death, they popped our doors and let us all right back out into that day room to do exactly what we'd been doing. You see, that could have been me. It could have been one of your loved ones, anybody that you know that has been to jail or prison. That's the reality that I was living in at that moment. That man's life had such less value, little value, that we were back out in the day room watching sports and playing cards before that man's family even knew that his life was taken. The power of our choices and decisions that we make today can set us on a path and a trajectory for success or absolute disaster. I got sober 2.5 weeks after that day. I got sober in October 24, 2017. I've never had a single relapse. I got out of prison in 2019. I hit the ground running, and I made a deal with myself that my life's goal, my life's work would be to try to bring people out of the hell that I lived in, to try to spread awareness, and to try to give people hope, because so many people are living in a world that is hopeless to them. And I'm just here to tell you guys that your life matters, that the choices and the decisions you make have real world consequences. And it starts in high school, it starts in middle school. If you guys don't have to go down the path I went on, and my words and my story can help you guys maybe make a change, then everything we do is worth it. John and I get to travel the country. We're blessed, and we get to speak to kids all over the country, and we get to share our message. And everywhere we go, there's people that are currently using drugs, or their family members are using drugs, or we know people in prison. But you guys matter, and your stories matter. And your consequences have actions. With summer coming up, make right choices, make good decisions. Surround yourself with positive people. Don't let my story become your story. I want to thank you guys so much. We are Cody and John Speak. We love you guys. Thank you.
My name is Clayton Smith, and I am the assistant principal at Northeastern High School. And today we brought our 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th graders over to listen to the speakers. And we just felt like this was just a great experience for the kids. The testimonies that both gentlemen gave were very, very powerful. But I think the thing that I walk away from is the part that something could be connected to in some capacity in the way that they told their stories that all of our kids could connect to in some manner. And I think the thing that my takeaway is the filling of the voids. Like there's always some sort of a void at some point in your life that we're going to need to fill, and we need to fill it with healthy choices. And so this was a great experience, I think, for the kids to be able to hear and also be aware of the dangers that lurk out there when we make poor choices.
Hi, my name is Ken Powell. I'm the School Resource Officer at Northeastern Middle High School. I was very pleased to be able to come down here today. Very powerful message. One of the things that really stood out to me was that people matter. I mean, I think all of our kids, and no matter what school we're in, they need to realize that people do care and they do matter, and there is a purpose in their life. And I think it was very important that they all heard that today, and I was very pleased to be here. Yep. After hearing this today, I would highly recommend for people to come out and hear Cody and John speak. Their stories that they share, you can tell that their heart is in what they do, and they do want to make a difference. So I'd highly recommend them to people to come and hear.
I'm Brent Baker, Director of Student Achievement with Richmond Community Schools, and we just had an opportunity to hear Cody and John speak this morning. I had heard of Cody and John speak through word of mouth, but just got to hear them for the first time this morning. And being an educator of 20 plus years and a former high school principal, the message that they share is a message that all schools, all middle schools, and all high schools should hear. A message that all middle schools and all high schools should hear. This message is powerful, with firsthand experience, and it's a message that can reach every student and staff member. And so I can't recommend Cody and John speak enough. Thank you.
Is my mic on? Can you all hear me? Hey, I need y'all to do me a favor, all right? So we started a TikTok and an Instagram, and we really need your help following us. It's Cody and John Speak, and at the end of this, if y'all are cool with it, we'll do like a TikTok. We did a few schools in Kentucky that were loud and said nobody could get as loud as them, and see how loud you all can get. Are you with me? Okay, here's what I need from you. Wake up. Wake up with me a little bit, because I have like this attention thing, and the fact that I've got some of you over here and some of you over here is already going to drive me nuts. But if you're not like interacting with me, I'm going to get sad and I'm just going to leave. So how's everybody doing this morning? Oh my gosh, we'll go back over here then. How's everybody doing this morning? Is this Richmond? Is this Richmond? Who are y'all? Who are y'all? Who are these people? Asleep. Asleep. I like this side though. We need some work. I sat with y'all. You guys are my friends now. We're friends. Richmond. I'm about to go up there and talk. So my name is John. I'm a recovery coach, and what that means is like I'm in recovery myself, but I work with people that are struggling with addiction and things like that. And some of my jobs in the past, I've worked with people and done emergency room responses for people that have overdosed or that hit these signs that they may be struggling. And I show and I talk to them and try to get them help. So I just want to share some stories with you. Are you still with me? It's okay to interact. We don't have to be that quiet, okay? But I'm going to share some stories with you, and then we're going to blow this TikTok up because I need to go viral. Like, I need this. Are you guys with me? And we can do this together. You can go viral, too. Northeastern? All right. Are y'all getting in trouble? Is the faculty getting in trouble? Okay, so anyway, I had, what do you think is the worst withdrawal you can have? Do you understand what withdrawal is? like when you're trying to get off of something. What do you think the worst one is? Just shout some stuff out to me. Okay. Northeastern, do you got anything? Crack. Pain medication's tough. Heroin's tough, right? A lot of these things are tough, but it's actually alcohol withdrawals. Like withdrawing off of alcohol can actually kill you. Did you know that? It's that intense. It's horrible. We're going to go back over here. We're going to try you guys again. What's up, Richmond? Getting there. So I got a call to the hospital one evening, and somebody had overdosed. And I go into the emergency room, and I see this young man, and he's got like the tubes in him and everything like that. He was 14 years old. And he thought he was shooting up heroin, but it was actually fentanyl. And they Narcaned him and brought him back. But as we were sitting there talking, he was 14 years old. And he thought like he didn't really have a place. He didn't even care. He didn't even care that he had died. He didn't care if he died. And that's an interesting thing because like he thought that nobody cared. And we'll get into that later because a lot of you probably feel that way too. And there's some inaccuracies in that, of course. But I had gotten another call. It was actually a couple weeks after this one, and it was a 17-year-old. And he was actually a good kid. He had a family. He had already started at 17, and he was working, but he would get stressed on the weekends. And every once in a while, he would take a half a Xanax to relax, or a Xanax to relax. So he took a half a Xanax, and they had to Narcan him 4 times. Do you know what Narcan is? We familiar with Narcan? I need y'all to interact. Or we're going to have to do, you want me to get slideshows out about Narcan, or can we continue with the story? Let's go with the story. He had to be Narcan. Northeastern. So he's laying in this hospital bed, and they had to Narcan him 4 times off of what he thought was a half of a Xanax. And when they did the reports and checks the screens and everything, that he didn't have any Xanax in his system at all. It was completely fentanyl. Do y'all know what fentanyl is? As we're talking, raise your hand if you are familiar with what fentanyl is. Keep your hand up. Over here too. Do we know what fentanyl is? Have we heard of fentanyl? Raise your hand if it's impacted your life in any way, shape, or form. Somebody you know, you've lost somebody you care about. Yeah. 17 years old, and he almost lost his life because he thought he was taking a half of a Xanax. How many of you know that some of the stuff on the streets that you've taken isn't actually what they say it is? Y'all understand that? It isn't the same world. It's changed, and since the pandemic and all of this isolation, like you guys are faced with so many challenges that adults can't understand, right? Like a lot of things going on in your life with social media and the things on the streets, like adults just don't get it, right? So he was 17 years old, and he overdosed and almost died off of what he thought was a half of a Xanax. We just had a kid in our community overdose and die because he bought a blunt, and it was laced with fentanyl. He thought he was going to buy a blunt. He bought a blunt, and his family had to bury him because they had laced it. Y'all got to be careful with what you're touching. But this isn't Scared Straight. Let's wake back up. How y'all doing today? Everybody good? Richmond! There's my people. Richmond, are you with me? Richmond. One more time. I'm getting tired out here, y'all. Richmond, are you with me? So I have a friend. I call him a friend, but he's more like a nephew, almost like a son, a little brother. And I met him when he was 14 years old, and we've been doing this speaking stuff, but sometimes we do recovery events. And I met him at one of these recovery events. His mom came up to me, and she was like, "Hey, can you come talk to my son? He needs help." I went over and saw this kid. He was 14 years old, and he was bawling, and he was like, it's so hard. Like, life is so hard, and he had been using for so long. And we talked a little bit and got to know each other, and he had lost his dad when he was little, and he wanted a family. Just all of these different dynamics that led into him trying to escape and find peace, whatever it is he was looking for. So we started working with him, and he started doing stuff too. He was 14 years old. He was like 15 years old, and he started talking to people like I'm talking to y'all now, and he's amazing at it. He killed it. And some time went by, and mind you, like, this is the stuff I like to do. He liked to have like family nights and things like that. And now at this time, he's 15, 16 years old. He just wanted to have movie nights and do what families do, because he never had that. Well, a few years go by, and he ends up relapsing. He overdosed, and they had him at the hospital, and he survived the overdose. He was humiliated, and he felt like, he was so embarrassed and ashamed. He felt like there was no like going back to being good. Have you ever been in a place where you thought, like, I have made this mistake right here is the end of me? This mistake right here, I will never escape it. Right? Have any of y'all been there? Are you with me? It's too big. I'm no longer redeemable because of this mistake. I'm humiliated. Some of you might think my family knows, the other students know, the administration knows, and I will never get out of the shame of this decision. Have any of y'all ever felt like that? And that's how he felt. And because of that, he continued to use, and he overdosed like 3 more times. So then it was like I finally had got to the point. I have a 13 and a 16-year-old daughter right now. And it had got to the point where he was doing so bad, I told him, I said, hey, you're coming to live with me. He didn't want to, because I can be mean if you're using drugs in my house. Yep. So he comes to live with me, and he still wants to do the family stuff because this is what he wants. This is what he wanted, was family. And he's staying with us, and he would come to. You guys know what indoor soccer is? One of my daughters plays indoor soccer. He would come to the indoor soccer games. He was a part of our family. He was one of mine. And we would do this family stuff. He kept getting high. And I'd be sitting on my couch, and I would be like ready to bang my head in the wall. Like, what do I have to do to get you out of this place? Why do you keep choosing this when you have all these gifts and you have all this potential? I've seen him change lives with the words that he speaks. Why are you choosing to nod out on my couch? And we were talking one night, and I was like, dude, like, you have a calling on your life and this purpose. What are you doing? And he told me, he was like, nobody cares. He said, nobody cares unless I'm doing good. And he said, I've messed up enough, it doesn't matter anymore. What had happened is he started to believe that he had no value. His purpose was gone. And he truly believed that nobody cared. He was living with me. And he still believed that nobody cared unless he was doing good. And some of y'all in here today, you feel like nobody cares, right? And some of you feel like you don't have value. And some of you think that the only time that people see you or love you is when you're doing good. So eventually he started to get a little better, and he moved out and started to do his own thing. And he had got an inheritance from I told you his father had passed away in a car accident, and he had gotten an inheritance from that. So he buys him a little vehicle. Actually, I think that's the first time Cody met him. We went to pick up some shirts, and he was all happy about having his new ride. And then he got an apartment. Well, he had met a girl in jail. You say, how did he meet a girl in jail? They were talking through the toilets. I know it's just like the Notebook, the Titanic. Isn't that romantic, Richmond? How did you meet your girl? We were talking through the toilets. Oh. Oh. But they were getting it figured out, and they were getting along, and so he got this apartment, and he's like FaceTimes me, and he's showing all the stuff in his apartment because he's so excited, to start living this part of his life. He showed me the bath mats, the shower curtains, all of this stuff just little stuff, but to him it was big stuff. And then he posts on Facebook, he finds out that his girlfriend is pregnant. Not Hope. He was happy. So who said Hope? We need to talk to y'all. So he found out that his girlfriend was pregnant, and he does this post on Facebook because we used that back then. And it said, well, fam, it's finally happened. Everything that I've ever dreamed for and dreamed about is now happening. I found out that she's pregnant, and I'm going to propose to her and make her my wife. I'm finally going to man up. This is like a dream come true. Beautiful. So everything he ever wanted is right there. This young man that we watched grow and struggle and all of these things had poured so much into. My family loved him, the community loved him, and of course, I loved him to death. 2 days after that post, his uncle goes by to, they had lunch and stuff every once in a while, and he went by, nobody answered, so he goes into, he got into the apartment. The new apartment I was talking about, they were living there together. And when he got there, her toddler, because she had already had a kid, was walking around, but he couldn't find them. So he keeps looking, and he opens up the bathroom, or he goes to the bathroom, and there, on the bathroom floor, is him and his fiance, and obviously the baby that wasn't born, laid out on the ground with needles in their arms, locked up in purple, and they were in such bad shape, he didn't even try to revive them. And he was looking there at all of this purpose and this person that so many people loved and these people that so many people loved. And he had to start making calls. There was no reason to even try to revive him. He looked that bad and she looked that bad. Everything that he ever wanted. And I think to myself, was he thinking we're going to get high one more time to kind of celebrate and then move on? But remember, I told you, he said nobody cared. But I still had to tell my daughters that this dude had died. But he said nobody cared. And some of you believe that nobody cares. So I told my daughters they're a wreck. I have to write a eulogy with another friend, and I'm in the garage writing this stuff out. I don't want to do this because I'm not ready for him to be gone. You know what I mean? But the choice that he made, he's gone. And now I'm left with this, writing cute words about somebody that I would have died for, that somebody that I loved. And he said nobody cared. But he didn't take into account what I would be going through when he was gone and what my daughters would be going through when he was gone and his other friends and family. But he said nobody cared. So we have to make the funeral arrangements and all this stuff, and it was during the pandemic, and this dude that I loved like a son, like a nephew. My daughters loved him like a big brother, and we got to bury him and put him in the ground, and I ain't ready for that. Have you ever had to bury somebody you just weren't ready to bury? I'm still not over it. And he said nobody cared, and some of you think that nobody cares. So we go to the church, and we're only supposed to have a limited amount of people in it, and the place is packed. There's people wrapped around outside, having to walk by this casket. Everybody's crying. Everybody's crying. He said nobody cared, and hundreds of people couldn't walk by the casket and look at him without crying. And you think nobody cares. And I'm here telling you it's a lie. Because the truth is, so many people cared about him. And the truth is, every one of you sit in here, and I know it's tough, but you have this purpose in your life, and you have these dreams, and you have like these goals and these things that you want to do, and you get trapped in this moment, and you can only see where you're at right now. That's all you can see. And I'm not getting love from the person that I want. It doesn't matter if I'm alive or dead. I'm just going to do me because nobody cares, right? But I can tell you, doing what I do, that I have been to too many funerals to count, one after the other, of people that I care about. And so many of them would tell you, nobody cares. It doesn't matter if I'm alive or dead. It doesn't matter the decisions I make because nobody cares. I've never seen an empty funeral home. I've never seen a casket without at least one person crying over that thing because the person in that casket meant so much to them, and you mean so much to some people. And the decisions you make impact those people on a level you'll never understand until you're in a garage writing a eulogy about somebody that you love, and they're gone. How many of you would be destroyed if one of your friends passed away and you had to bury them? Raise your hands. Some of y'all don't care if you're friends. Yeah? The choices you're making right now may seem like simple little choices, like I'm just gonna go grab a Xanax, I'm just gonna go buy a blunt off this dude that I don't know, I'm just gonna do this or that, but it is killing people. It's killing the youth. Do you understand that? It's killing people your age. Not everything in this world is what it seems. Not everything you're taking is what it's supposed to be. So I want you to think about the dreams, and I want you to think about the people around you, because you know there's people around you that care. And when you start to make these decisions, I want you to really process, like, what would happen if I had to bury my dude and write his eulogy? What would happen? How would that feel? If I had to let my girl go and just get put in the ground and there's nothing I can do about it but cry? Every one of y'all has a purpose and a reason to be here. How many of y'all have dreams? Like things you want to do outside of high school. Some of y'all want to stay in high school forever? Northeastern? Y'all want to stay in high school forever? Richmond? We almost had y'all. Now we're back down again. Richmond. Are we going to stay in high school forever, or do we have dreams? Understand that there are people around you that care about you. Understand that these decisions that you're making are so much bigger. When you heard Cody's story, like, you don't want to end up there. Trust me, you don't want to be in that place. Taking the big bus to the big boy land, you know what I mean? You don't want to be there. So now, let me check my phone. Y'all might have made it. So now, are y'all with me? Are y'all with me? Just repeat after me and then we'll get into the TikTok. I have value. Oh God, guys, that sounds so forced. Let's try something else. I am loved. That's a hard one to say, isn't it? Let's say it again. I am loved. I am loved. I am loved. I have a purpose. Say it louder like you have a purpose. I have a purpose.
John's got all the energy in the world. He's like 107. I don't know how he does it. I'm just going to close us out real quick. John asked you guys, how many of you have a friend in here that it would break your heart if you lost them? And I've seen hands fly up all over the room. How many of you in here in Northeastern or Richmond Community Schools have a trusted adult that you see on a daily basis, that you know without a shadow of a doubt that you trust them wholeheartedly? By a show of hands. Show of hands. Thank you. Educators, principals, teachers, administration, counselors. For me, I just want to speak a little life into you guys for a second. Every one of those hands that shot up, every single one of those hands that shot up in the air, you are that person for one of them. You are that person that their home life may be completely chaos and they may be struggling more than we even know. But when they come here, when they come to school, you are that safe spot. Let that resonate. I know our principal has been here for a long time. We respect our educators so much because for me, there was a principal in my high school that I was ready to end my life, and I had nothing else to live for, to look up to, and she would speak life into me, and she would tell me that I had a purpose, and she would tell me that I'm going to be something someday, but I didn't see it. But she planted those seeds in 2001 that finally came to fruition in 2017, and if it wasn't for those words, I may not be here. So for what you guys do, and students, what I can promise you without any doubt whatsoever, there's not a teacher or administrator or educator in this building that does it for the money. Because I can promise you, they don't get paid nothing. They're doing it, the reason they're in this building is because they genuinely care about you guys and they want to see you guys truly succeed. But I'm going to wrap it up with this. You educators, just know that there's going to be knuckleheads. I was a knucklehead. But what you don't know is what's going on behind the scenes. And those knuckleheads that were me are reaching out and they're crying out because they have no one else. And you are that safe space. Students and educators alike, we cannot thank you enough. We are Cody and John Speak, and we love you guys. Thank you so much.